everybody. My name is Soumya Mandava, and welcome to the What the Health podcast, brought to you by the Alumni Association in conjunction with the Renaissance School of Medicine. Each episode, we bring on an outstanding alumnus who tells us what the health we can expect after graduating from medical school. From their journey to their interests to incorporating it into their chosen fields, we get to hear it all. So, let's jump right in. Hi everyone, and welcome to our new episode of What the Health. Today, our co-host is...
Hey everyone, my name is Mit, and I'm a first-year medical student.
And today we have the distinct pleasure of talking with Dr. Sandel, an emergency medicine physician and graduate of the class of 1992. How are you doing today, Dr. Sandel?
Good.
We're so happy to have you here today. Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I ended up going into medicine. I was always good at sciences, and came to Stony Brook. And what was interesting was my path was a little bit indirect. I'm doing emergency medicine now, and there's nothing else I'd rather do. But I actually started off, I matched in internal medicine and did 2 residencies.
That is super interesting that you've done 2 residencies. Can you tell us a little bit about your decision to do both of them and pursue EM now?
So what happened was a friend of mine who's now a fellowship director at a really major institution had said he wanted to be somewhere where people knew who he was, and that people came to him. That was really important to him. And I also kind of, I could appreciate it, but it didn't resonate with me. And what I said that I wanted was really to have meaningful relationships with people. And I wanted to be tested and sort of be in the foxhole or on the front line. So I actually initially planned on doing family medicine, right? Because they wanted this kind of vertical world. Well, I wanted to be a jack of all trades, and I wanted lateral mobility rather than upward mobility. So what happened was I came in gung-ho on family medicine and really wanting to do that. But I was influenced by Larry Smith, who's now the dean at Hofstra. And he really influenced me to do internal medicine. He thought there would be more options and choices within that. And he actually, I thought, was right, right? The interesting thing, though, is that when I was doing internal medicine, I realized it didn't fit maybe the way I think. And it also didn't fit my sense of being available to patients when I was off, right? That kind of thing was not as important to me as I thought it would be. And lo and behold, I find that now I am that person who has lateral mobility, who is, in the foxhole and on the front lines. And I have I actually have deep and meaningful connections with people. They're very brief, but they're very meaningful.
Thank you so much for sharing sort of your journey into emergency medicine. So just to get a bit of a better feel on emergency medicine, what does a sort of day-to-day schedule look like for you?
Sure. So it's an interesting question, day to day, right? So, I am now in community emergency medicine. And the way we work our schedule is we do about 3 shifts a week. And it's very varied. I end up working every other weekend for 12 hours. And I do about 4 nights a month, okay? Which are harder than you might think, right? And this actually just sort of self-segues into an idea of doing something for the right reasons. I think that's really important. And what are they, right? So the issue of, say, for instance, like there's a sense that, well, it's just that, right? It's just, 12 shifts a month or 13 shifts a month. It's really not, because they're very demanding. And everyone, even the guys in their 30s, will tell you that they're just wiped out the next day, right? That after they do 3 days in a row, no one wants to do the fourth. It's very varied. What's interesting is I work in a great group, at least with the scheduling is fairly democratic. And what our rule is that you get off when you want to have off. And so sometimes you may have to do that 5 in a row to support the other guys, but I get to have time when I want it. My day, I go to work and I take a brief sign out, and then I go to work. And then it's meaning, and patients come in with a little bit of everything.
What you were mentioning about the night shifts, they actually make us do a couple of them during our clerkship year. And you're totally right, where you just do one and it throws off the next 3 days. To recover from that, it takes so long.
It sure does. It does make it hard. And in our case, when our children, especially when our children were young, we actually had a nanny, because I would come home and I would go to sleep. I would find a way to have a lot of time with them, but your body, does need sleep. And also this is actually an interesting thing. I think is sort of a warning, maybe a warning or for people. One of the things that's really interesting about emergency medicine is it's when you go in as a medical student, it's very dynamic, and you are important. You're interviewing people and you're coming back and presenting them, and you see this tremendous variety of things, right? It's maybe the only field where you get to kind of, at least I think it's the closest to doing what you would be doing, right? So it's easy to see yourself in that, right? While say internal medicine or other things, it's a little bit different, because people are mostly in an outpatient setting.
Is there a particular moment that you can remember, and we talked about this a little bit before, between medicine and EM, that you realized you wanted to go into emergency medicine?
Yeah. Okay. This is an interesting philosophical question. So what happened was I had I matched at University of Rochester at Strong Memorial in internal medicine. And as I was working, I just found there were a lot of rewards, but it somehow didn't feel as gratifying. And when I was doing my first year, it was really a rough year. First of all, just being a resident, it's like being a parent. Everyone says that they think it's going to be easy, and then you do it, and then you actually experience it, and it's just much harder than you thought, and you're really tested. So I was going through that time. It was also a very difficult time. And this relates to the story, in that my father was very sick, and he died back at home during my at the first day of my second year. So during that time, I went to a series of lectures by a Jesuit priest. And what happened was, I was really struggling. It just wasn't fun when I was doing medicine. And the ER was always fun for me, right? It just felt good. And making a change from residencies is a really big decision, right? It's years on your life, right? And there were other decisions about whether to leave or to finish. What I would say when I was doing, while this time happened, and this gentleman gave this priest gave these series of lectures, he said, how you feel when you're most at peace is the right decision. If you're discerning between two good or two bad things, and you don't know which to do, how you feel when you're most at peace is the decision. So when that happened, that meant that sort of resonated with me. And I ended up stumbling into someone, and I was deciding, having trouble deciding whether my motives were correct, because when you're in your residency, it's so busy and there's so much strain. And what I told them was, I said, when I did internal medicine, it was really kind of hard, and just feel like there was a lot of drudgery and following things up, and just I didn't love it. And I said, but I don't know about my motives in the ER. I said, the worse it is, the better I feel. I said, it feels like candy to me. It's a synesthesia almost. I just loved it so much. And I said, and the worse it was, the better I felt. And he looked at me, and we spoke the same language of discernment. I knew what he meant when he spoke to me. And he said, when I look at you, and you talked about internal medicine, your posture is down, you're quiet, you seem very just down and conflicted. He said, when you talk about emergency medicine, he said, you're just excited and open and alive. He said, and you may not perceive it this way, but I see you more at peace when you're talking about that. And then he said, think about it, test it, and make your decision. And what happened was, I spoke to to some of the ER docs, and I said, should I finish? And they said, well, you'll never regret it if you finish. He goes, 1 year in your life, 5-10 years down the road won't mean anything. He said, so I would finish because you'll never regret it. And that's a big piece of advice, right? About time, right? Because some of these things seem so long, but I never regret that time, ever, having done both.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. That was an incredible story, and hopefully it helps a lot of our peers sort of find that moment where they figure out where they are most at peace. Just to switch it up a little bit and sort of think about in the big picture ideas. Mm-hmm. So how do you think COVID-19 has changed sort of the landscape for emergency medicine?
Well, that's a very complex question. I think for the ER doctor, and definitely for the committed ER doctor, I don't think it's changed much at all. Okay. One of the things that's changed is this year there's just a great deal of flux. Really, I think more for our nurses and techs, where there's just been a lot of dissatisfaction, and there's just a lot of, and this is a trend that a lot of people are sort of either leaving or moving, and so there's a lot of flux there. I will say at a personal level, right? COVID and facing my own mortality, facing the possibility of dying, especially in the beginning, right? Where you didn't know, were your friends going to die, or were you going to die? For me, it just clarified things. It clarified where I wanted to be, and that this was that it was just worth it. A friend of mine had said, during what I call the bad times, right? And they were awful. It was so bad. A friend of mine said, should I go to work? And there were just so many people that I was pronouncing, and there were so many sick and dead people, that I said, well, let me call you when I'm done. And I went into my car and I called him. I'm getting emotional now. He said, should I go to work? He said, well, what's it like? And I said a couple of words, and then I just started crying. I said, I can't explain it. I just can't explain how many people are dying, and what it feels like. So it's really rough. But on the other hand, and I would just kind of come home and just look at the walls, because you're on the front line, you just are. And my friend had said, he lives across the street from me. He said, "Don't you want to quit? Aren't you afraid?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm terrified." But you don't understand. You have to understand the pull, right? And it's very deep, so I get very emotional about it. But I said that I said I'd rather die than not stand with the people that I was next to. I said I just wouldn't. I would rather die. I'm going. And that was I mean, that's such a rewarding thing. You know, I get to look back at my life, and it was just in some way it was the hardest moment, but it was in a way the most rewarding moment that I really, it's certainly my professional career. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for everything that you and all the other frontline workers have sacrificed and all that you've done for all of us.
You know, I'm always uncomfortable with that, but you know, that moment of time was, the camaraderie was so it was so thick. I was just lucky.
We appreciate you all the same. Thank you so much, Dr. Sandel, for all of your time and everything you've shared with us today. Thanks for tuning in to the What the Health podcast. Please be sure to check out our linked resources at the Stony Brook Medicine YouTube channel. See you next time.